Malinche and Cortés entered the bathhouse naked. It was surprising to see Cortés free of his garments and appearances. He seemed smaller and vulnerable. The only requisite condition to fulfill that ritual of purification and rebirth was nakedness. For the cleansing of the blood to take place, it was necessary that all the pores of the body expand, open, and in doing so, allow the steam, that other image of water, the spirit of water, to purify the body 4 times, which corresponded to the 4 cardinal points, the 4 stations, the 4 elements. It was Cortés's first experience with this sacred practice, which he agreed to participate in at the request of Malinche. So convinced was she that the gods returned to us our consciences when their essence materialized in the water, that she had asked Cortés to relax for a while in the waters before he took any action against the inhabitants of Cholula. Cortés resisted at first, thinking that the invitation seemed suspicious. What kind of proposition was this? To go into a small circular enclosure that had only one exit, the same as the entrance, and to do so naked and unarmed. The atmosphere in Cholula did not inspire him to have blind faith in anyone. Up to that moment, neither of the 2 counselors had wanted to receive him. Cholula relied on a worldly counselor, Tlaquiach, Lord of the here and now, and the spiritual one, Tlachiac, Lord of the world beneath the earth. Both of them lived in houses adjacent to the temple of Quetzalcoatl. The people in Cholula spoke Nahuatl, the language of the empire, and they were subjects of the Mexicas, to whom they paid tribute. But Cholula was an independent dominion and, like Tlaxcala, had a government ruled by various lords. They were a proud people and could not imagine any situation in which their god Quetzalcoatl would fail to protect them. So they did not seem all that fearful of the foreigners. They had plenty of faith in their tutelary god. Cortés and his men had arrived in Cholula on their way to Tenochtitlan, accompanied by their allies, the Totonacans from Zempoala and the Tlaxcaltecans. The Spaniards entered Cholula after marching the distance of 40 kilometers that separated Tlaxcala from Cholula. They were welcomed and fed, but not so the Totonacans and the Tlaxcaltecans, who remained on the outskirts of the city. Only a few hundred went in with the Spaniards, transporting their artillery and other equipment. The reason for this was that the inhabitants of Cholula had old feuds with those of Tlaxcala and in no way would allow them into the city, much less armed. Cortés was impressed with the beauty and grandness of Cholula. Cholula was a densely populated and prosperous city. Its temples made evident that the city was, without doubt, one of the most important religious centers of the New World. The main temple, dedicated to the cult of Quetzalcoatl, was the tallest pyramid in Mexico, with 120 steps. Aside from this temple, Cortés counted over 430 towers, or pyramids, which he called mezquitas, or little mosques. Cholula had some 200,000 inhabitants and some 50,000 houses. It was the most important city that the Spaniards had seen on their long journey inland from the coast. One of its attractions was a huge market whose specialties included feathered works of art, ceramic plates, and precious stones. But 3 days after their arrival, the people of Cholula, under the pretext of a shortage of provisions, stopped giving food to the Spaniards, supplying them only with firewood and water. Cortés then had to ask the Tlaxcaltecans to find them food. There was an atmosphere of suspicion and anxiety permeating the city. Cortés found out from the Tlaxcaltecans that outside the city, troops of Mexicas were gathering. His informants warned him that they were most likely preparing with the Cholutelcans an attack on the Spaniards. Faced with such a climate of intrigue, Cortés had to make a decision. He had already confronted and defeated the Totonacans and Tlaxcaltecans, and had their support, so he had to continue with his plans of conquest. He had to reach Tenochtitlan. He wasn't going to allow them to stop him. He had to make a fateful decision. He, Cortés, was not a mere soldier. He was the emissary and representative of the King of Spain, and the ambush they were preparing against him, by extension, was an ambush directed against the King of Spain. So he had to act in the name of the crown, defending it resolutely and punishing with death the treason that was being hatched against the King of Spain. Taking these facts into account, it was logical that Cortés had no wish to enter the bathhouse. He was more concerned with attacking before being attacked than in participating in some kind of pagan ritual. However, Cortés, who never took more than 3 steps without a bodyguard protecting him, unexpectedly agreed to go into the bathhouse, where he would be literally a prisoner. The reason for his decision was that Malinali had explained to him briefly that years before, the Toltecans had overthrown the Omelcans, the ancient inhabitants of Cholula, and in that place had established the cult of Quetzalcoatl, a deity who was associated with Venus, the morning star, and who accompanied the sun in its trajectory. Quetzalcoatl was a man who had become a god who did not need human sacrifices, did not ask for them, who only needed to set fire with his cane to the old sun, so that the new sun rose without any human sacrifices along the way. Sacrifices that the Aztecs established when they settled in Tula, betraying the principles of Quetzalcoatl. That is why the Aztecs feared his return. They felt guilty and awaited their punishment. If you enter the bathhouse, if you shed all your garments, your medals, shed all your fears, and sit on the Mother Earth, near the fire, near the water, you will have the power to be renewed, reborn, elevated, to travel with the wind like Quetzalcoatl, leaving your flesh behind, your human clothing, and transforming yourself into a god. And only a god can defeat the Mexicas. Cortés forgot his doubts. He had realized the great spirituality of the native people, and his warrior's instinct told him that it was the right thing to do. If he could reveal himself to them as their god Quetzalcoatl, no human power could defeat him. And so he assigned 2 of his captains to guard the entrance to the bathhouse and ordered soldiers to line its perimeter. Inside the bathhouse, the air was extraordinary. In spite of the semi-darkness, you could make out the faces of Malinali and Cortés in detail, sketched by the tenuous light that entered from the only small opening in that stone womb. That tiny space permeated with hot vapor. Malinali's good intentions of putting Cortés in touch with that part of nature responsible for interweaving the perception of the invisible, that which commingles seed with tree, fruit with taste, bark with mud, stone with fire, sperm with thought, thought with stars, stars with pores of the skin, and pores of the skin with the saliva that pronounce the words that expand the universe, were about to come to naught, for the darkness and their nakedness awoke in them an unexpected desire, such as they had never felt before. For Malinali, the nearness of a man who did not belong to her world or to her race, but who was already a part of her past, made her uneasy. Her memory sharpened and filled her thoughts like needles, reminding her of the pain she felt on being forcefully taken by Cortés. Her body still hurt, but yet she felt a restlessness, a fervor, a longing to be embraced, touched, and kissed anew. Cortés, for his part, remembered with his lips the pleasurable sensation of licking and sucking that woman's nipples, and he was overcome by an uncontrollable urge to drink the sweat that dripped from them. But neither of them did anything. They remained still and in total silence.